Welcome back, everyone, to Speaking of Art. I'm your host, Edwin Hoffman, coming to you live from the Wham Studios on Packard Road in beautiful Ann Arbor, Michigan, celebrating the Purple Rose Theater Company and its latest production, Bert and Trixie Visit the Vet, a new play, enjoying its world premiere beginning on June 20th by playwright Matt Letcher, the great playwright and actor, just vast for television and film. I believe he probably met Jeff Daniels for the first time on the set of Gettysburg, and they have collaborated several times, and Matt's plays are always incredibly well received at the Purple Rose and through the whole region. Our second wonderful guest, highlighting Bert and Trixie Visit the Vet, is Sarah Pearline, scenic designer for this production. And, in this very special, I think, broadcast today, when we're going behind the scenes of what it is to put on a play like this, particularly in a theater like the Purple Rose, which has the audience on three sides, where that intimacy is embraced. It is something also that cannot be escaped. The importance of creating an ambiance of, and I've described the drive from Ann Arbor when I go to see a production at the Purple Rose. I love the drive going there, and I love going into the theater. I know that I'm transitioning. And I know that for Sarah, I can't wait to get her insights into this, what it is like to help to enhance that atmosphere, to create that mood, so to speak, that the actors are also perfecting for a production. Scenic design, giving us the feeling that we are in an environment. This is something that I look at. In fact, I look at this before I really look at anything else when I go to the theater. I want to be in that environment. I want to understand the paneling on the walls, the table. Why is there a magazine lying there? Oh, it's an open floor plan. You can see the kitchen there. There's the door. People coming in and going out. I want to feel that I'm part of that circulation on that stage. Sarah Pearline is the kind of person who makes this happen. I want to welcome Sarah right now. Sarah Pearline, welcome to Speaking of Art.
Oh, thank you so much. I'm really excited to talk to you.
I am just delighted. Congratulations for this play. We were just speaking in the first half hour with your colleague Maria Rugen, who plays the nurse in Bert and Trixie Visit the Vet. And you are the scenic designer, which takes in so much that creates that ambiance, the actors and as well as their surroundings that you are responsible for. Can you tell us a little bit about the what excites you about this particular set, about the production, what makes it, say, a little bit different from the other work that you've done, and I'm going to go into that in just a moment. I'm very excited about this play. Let me know what it was like for you, challenging as a scenic designer.
Yeah, well, I love actually how you talk about your transition from the street into the theater and, really appreciating and asking sort of why everything is in the space. Because one thing at the Purple Rose that's so wonderful is that the audience is on three sides and there's not a bad seat in the house, right? There's
Absolutely.
No one is further than 5 rows away, right, which is spitting distance. So all of the details truly, truly matter. And I know when anything that I'm working on, I'm really trying to be in conversation with the play and paying attention to the playwright's intentions and sort of like pick up on all of the details. And, if I can respond to those in the environment in some way, it just feels so much more special and more powerful of a way to tell a story, right? To have an environment that is doing all of that stuff. So, for Bert and Trixie, it's a delightful play to read. The first time I read it, I was just going through and enjoying. It was a sort of laugh out loud, even on the page without actors bringing it to life. So I knew it was going to be really exciting. But there are obviously, well, maybe not obviously yet, but there's humans playing animals, and so there's just a lot to consider in terms of what that looks like and how those human animals occupy space and interact with space, and how they'll interact with each other, and then of course there's different needs in the events of the play, right? So we're in a vet's office or in the waiting room. We need to be able to come into the space, understand that it's a waiting room. There's descriptions, and the nurse and the animals go back to the exam rooms. So all of that has to be there, and that's just the sort of practical stuff, right? And then there's the mood that has to bring it to life and match what's sort of going on, or hopefully either match or somehow support what's going on in that waiting room. So
really, you're enhancing. I can't wait to be able to hear the collaboration that you have, say, with Matt Letcher and with the playwright in general and the director, because when you read the script, and correct me if I'm wrong, but you probably know it backwards and forwards. Also, you get a sense of what the climate is like, what the environment is like, and that becomes a collaboration too, trying to interpret that, right? It's kind of like it's really a 4-point collaboration, because you bring the actors in also, not just with the director and the playwright. Can you tell us a little bit of that biology that creative people do, who are involved in live performance, how you work out that environment, which is so memorable to audience members? And I can tell you just remember the sets. Oh my God, I just love that, and I love the way the actors just peopled that place. Can you tell us a little bit about that sort of 4-way collaboration?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I'll sit for a long time with the script, and just like I was saying, right, I'll read it, of course, for mood and tone and what's going on, and then for the practical aspects, I'm trying to. There's like a little bit of science and art in a way going on at the same time, right? So checking in this particular play, right, there is. I don't think I'm giving anything away. There's a cat, a parrot, a pair of golden retrievers, and then there is the owner and the nurse, and other animals that they talk about, and the actions that they're doing. Right, they're coming in, they're waiting, they're sort of worrying about what's going on in the exam rooms. They're telling stories. They're becoming friends with each other. There's a whole lot of. As a pet owner myself, I was delighted to read all of the things that the way animals think about the human experience. It's beautiful how we describe stuff and it's sort of flipped on its head, which was really just delightful. But yeah, I working with the play and the playwright, of course, and that's something that's so exciting on a world premiere too, right? That it hasn't ever been figured out before, and so there's a certain freedom to explore what's happening in the text. And there's a whole lot of trust that's happening. And what's cool too is that I know, working with Rhiannon, of course, and everyone at the Purple Rose, that and we've done some world premieres together before, that the playwright is available, right? So I'm working with drafts of the script, and I know that like if we stumble onto something in the physical world that this play will occupy, and if there's I don't want to say a conflict, but it's a lot to imagine for a person when they're writing a story, I would think, right? I know it's a lot for me to sort of parse together everything that needs to happen within the script, and so making sure that there are possibilities for that action to happen. And so knowing that sometimes we might be able to go back to Matt and talk about, whether it's the swing of the door or where the parrot is, or and how that affects, the writing. There might be a line that gets changed, or even just a word that gets changed, right, to help us realize things in an actual setting.
Indeed.
Yeah.
I, you said that beautifully, and it made me think of a quote which I have here by director Rhiannon Ragland, who says,
Uh-huh.
just generally about theater, the most magical thing about theater is you sit in a dark room with a bunch of strangers and all listen to the same story, but each person takes something different from it. Each person hears a story through their own experiences and life, and that's the experience I think that gives it veracity, right,
Yeah.
Sarah? And what you do with creating the set enhances that, complements that, correct?
Yeah.
Makes it memorable, and I say that because it's important for me because I remember the first play that I saw going back to when I was very young, Anthony Perkins in Equus, and
Ah,
just stylistically the way that was the period when sort of like the minimalist set was really being
sure.
explored, right? Hardly anything there, blacks and grays, and that you've got the actor. And like I was saying with Maria, I've always been a great fan of solo acting productions. You've got the one
Hmm.
actor up there through the whole thing. I think that's fascinating to be able to go into a character like that. Your style not like that. Can you say something about that? How the sort of audience's expectations about what they see in a set, and
Sure.
how the actors maneuver, in that environment, as opposed to what was really popular, like in the '60s and '70s, and how that's changed going forward.
Oh, sure. I mean, I love what the quote you gave from Rhiannon about how we all take away something different, but I'm also thinking about how it's something that we all share, right? So, my hope always when I'm approaching a design is to make a world that is at once familiar and universal, right? So that everyone
Mm.
can hop on board and recognize something from their own life and experience, right? But also that it's novel enough that it captures the imagination and keeps you, sort of zoned into I think I don't have to do much work keeping people zoned into the play and the world of the story, but leaving some room for the imagination as well, and for everyone's experience to enter into the thing, right? So if I can make a space, and then I'm also thinking about that there's room enough for the actors to have moments where they can be very close to each other, or thinking about how they might speak to each other across a room, or have, there might be some architecture coming between them, right? Giving different opportunities for them to sit or stand across the space and have destinations to go to, where you put a door or where you put a chair or things like that, right? Help just making a sort of landscape where dynamic action can take place, and there's opportunities for good staging and just good interactions between the actors, right? And that comes, of course, obviously from the script and from just I'm constantly looking at architecture and spaces, and I feel like when I'm out in public, right, I'm just watching people and how they interact and how they move about a space and what it looks like when you're in, sort of different size spaces or different shaped spaces and all of that stuff. And then, when you add a wonderful director, Rhiannon and I have done a number of shows together, and I just delight in working with her because we've come to a place where we almost have sort of a shorthand in recognizing certain moments in a script, maybe that, obviously the whole thing, but there might be trickier moments that we want to make sure that we talk through how potentially she might stage a thing, and so making sure that the scenery is there to support that work, or
Yeah.
just give different potentials, so that when she's in the rehearsal room, has space to play, and sometimes we'll talk about a moment and how it might happen, and then once they're in the rehearsal room, right, she's also collaborating with the actors, right, because they'll play around quite a bit and discover ways of using the space that I didn't even imagine when I was sketching and drafting and all of that. So, between the play and the director and the actors and then, the audience too, I feel like they see, I have heard things once shows are open about scenery that I didn't even, maybe it happened subconsciously or whatever. I'll happily take the credit for it, but, the audience will see stuff too that's just even, who knows. And then of course the lighting and costumes and sound are coming in.
You forecasted a question of mine, that what you were saying so beautifully. It came to my mind, and that is one thing I love about Purple Rose Productions is that whether the audience really understands it or not, they are being brought in as collaborators. And
sure.
Those people getting back to you like that, wherever they happen to be seated in the theater, and like you said, there's no bad seat. I mean, you never hear anybody say you got to avoid the big column, at the Purple Rose, right? Oh my God, the tickets were cheap or whatever, but my God, the column was in front of me. So, oh yeah, you don't have that. Everything is a good seat, but they might be at an angle and they are seeing the ensemble, so to speak, the human and the other material pieces that make up the set. And they're seeing something there that perhaps you and even Rhiannon didn't think of, and that must be affirming for you as an artist, because it enhanced the effect you didn't even perhaps plan for, but it's kind of an affirmation of what your overall scheme was, for that set, with the access, the egress, the whole thing that's so important on that kind of a stage.
Yeah, it's so true. It's very true. And it makes me think of going back, probably to January or February, such early conversations long before rehearsals start. But as we start designing the thing, we've got a parrot on stage. And parrots, they're in a cage, and we mocked up what the shape of that cage might be, and played with it in the space, right? Because again, with the audience on three sides and so close, everybody's getting a different view of the thing for sure, which is quite wonderful, and also a little bit nervous-making sometimes, right? To make sure that while everybody's getting a different view, they're all getting the same experience.
They all have a different views. How do you make that parrot into a cubist? So where everybody sees all the sides all at the same time, but you can't really do that.
You can't really do that, and you have to, I'm counting on the actor to be dynamic and move around and cheat out and do all these different things. But we also didn't want to put him sort of. One answer would be to put him upstage, right, sort of at the back of the scenery, where everyone is for sure to get a front-on view of him. But then there's other things. We needed a door out to the street, and we needed a door to the exam rooms, and there's lots of things that we were considering, and so finding where to put the parrot, and also giving the cat a place to be, right, or to climb and sort of do cat-like physical movements. There was a lot to consider, but that is one of the wonderful things at the Purple Rose, whether with Rhiannon or any other director that I've worked with there. They take the time, and there's just so much care. There's obviously so much care put into the acting and the directing, right, and making sure that the story is told in a really, really strong way. But I feel, as a designer, just so supported, right? Like I'm trying to help bring the story to life as much as possible, and I have the support there, right, to take the time and the effort and the care and the resources to really get it right. So, having the chance to sit in the theater with Rhiannon with this mocked up parrot cage, right? And really,
with a human actor in it, right?
Just
so I understand it, it's a human actor as the parrot. There isn't like say a
yes,
live,
there
real
is no
bird parrot in there.
It is, John Siebert
Okay.
is the parrot. Yes.
Okay, I thought maybe there'd be one avian character in this, truly avian, but because that would add in a whole other thing, because parrots are anything but silent, and that would that would be kind of interesting to work around with. Okay, no, you clarified it. It is an all human animal
all human cast. Yes.
But our wonderful guest by everyone is Sarah Pearline, the scenic designer of this fabulous play, and others. Also, associate professor of theater and dance at Wayne State University in her own backyard in Detroit, and she has worked not only in contemporary plays, but also costume dramas. She's done fabulous work with the Michigan Shakespeare Festival, a good friend of this program. Janice Blixt has been a guest several times on the show, and what the Michigan Shakespeare Festival is able to do. I wanted to ask you about that, Sarah, if I may. The challenges, or maybe not really, because of your background, when you go into a contemporary story. In this case, it's a vet's office, right? And you've got animals there, and it's a contemporary setting. What about then when you're making a change? In your next project is you're going to be doing a costume production, whether it's Shakespeare, you're going to be doing some other kind of a drama, but it's going to be historical in some way. Is that kind of like a welcome relief? That's great, I'm going to be able to interpret the Brontes in England or something like that in the mid-19th century or whatever, just after doing something that's very contemporary in dress, in setting? Or you just sort of switch sort of automatically almost to the one project to the other?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I really do switch sort of automatically. I've been asked before, sort of, what's your favorite project that you've worked on, and as sort of cheesy as it might sound, it's usually the project that I'm in the middle of is my most favorite.
That's a great way of answering it.
And then I move on to the next, and that's my favorite. I get to work with, whether the story is 400 years old or being told in 2025, right? We are still humans having these wonderful, rich, varied human experiences, and if we can sit in a room together and experience those stories, like it doesn't much matter to me when it takes place, as long as there's a story there and there's humans involved. If it's a historical thing, I know I'm telling it through the lens of our current audience, right? So I'm never trying to recreate some kind of historically accurate museum display, right? Like I want to make sure that today's audience has access to what story is being told, and sometimes it's so helpful to see it through. Somehow there's a way into that story, and so finding that balance of
that's a very interesting point, Sarah. That's a very interesting point, because I'd like to ask you your opinion about this. In recent years, over the last, say, 30 years, I would say since the film Titanic, and sort of like when the epic is kind of like reborn, Gladiator and all that, it seems that with every sort of historically based, say, film, and maybe even plays too, there is an incredible focus on authenticity in terms of the dress, the setting, whether they're going to be shooting on site or whether it's going to be, on a sound stage, whatever. But there is an incredible attention, as you know, to getting the costumes right to, say, 1785 or whatever it is. Mm-hmm. Are you of a different school where the idea is you just said the word balance, and that might be the operative word here, where maybe there's a little bit too much focus on the dazzling, still peripheral effects of that kind of authenticity, that the main thing is something else with the actors? Am I making sense with what I'm asking with that?
Oh yeah, for sure. I think there is a focus on authenticity, and I think that's such a wonderful way to get into a story. But yeah, I do think, even if the clothes are totally authentic, right, in their details, they're probably not made the same way they were made however many years ago.
Good point.
Right?
Yes.
Our technology has advanced so much and all of that. And I think the way that we interact with the world, right, of course, having, whether it's just as many kinds of media that we have available to us, right, and the way we give attention to images and things. Sometimes the New York Times puts out a look at a piece of art for 10 minutes straight.
Right.
And I love looking at art, and I even find that hard. I'm like, oh gosh, 10 minutes, that's so long. And so, just the way that we experience the world as contemporary humans versus how it was in the past. I think there's finding a balance, and there's got to be a way to find the truth of the thing, and it's not necessarily in the most naturalistic, historically perfect details.
Sarah Pearline,
yes.
I can't thank you enough for being on Speaking of Art and illuminating all of this for not only Bert and Trixie Visit the Vet. They're at the Purple Rose Theater Company beginning on June 20th, but through your whole career and your philosophy of set design. Thank you very much. I hope to have the opportunity to speak to you again. Everybody have a prosperous and artful week.